while I live on the internet. Independent, going global on the internet. Where does talent live on the internet? Indie meets internet. Hello, fellow listener. Welcome to Indie Meets Internet, the podcast, and this is episode 1, hosted by me, Matekoa, Motsoasele. And if you don't know me, I'd like to say a music business enthusiast, and when I'm not busy with my academics, I'm pretty much trying to write about the music business or, just sharing my thoughts. And I have a blog you can check out on indiemeetsinternet.com. So today we are basically going to talk about Spotify's launch in over 18 new countries, 18 new territories, and Lesotho being one of them. So that's kind of the context that I want to take. What does this mean for Lesotho and obviously consumers of Spotify in Lesotho, because this means a new consumer base. Of course, you don't need a VPN anymore if you used to use Spotify before then, because now you could have access to the full platform without needing your VPN. That makes it great because it means a lot more people can access it. And for the artists in Lesotho, it gives them a local market, on an international platform, because, Spotify is basically the go-to platform for music consumers because it's the biggest platform, right? So I kind of want to really touch upon this, and there's challenges and then there's solutions that I want to highlight on Spotify's launch. I'll start with the major challenge, which I think is legislation. If you look at Lesotho's legislation, we are very, very behind on, music rights and how these rights are administered. So a song, for example, is it's a complex thing, because in a song you're going to have the actual composition and then you're going to have the sound recording. And then in the composition, you're going to have, performance rights, and then you're going to have all of these mechanical rights. How does Lesotho's legislation compare with how these rights are administered in other countries? So in other countries, you find that you'd have these organizations or societies called CMOs, or collective management organizations. And basically what these societies do is they administer rights on behalf of songwriters, labels, publishers, performers of the sound recordings, and then they collect the royalties and distribute these royalties. Just on that, Lesotho has an organization called Lesotho, but it hasn't started operating. Already, it means that our artists aren't going to be getting the royalties that are due to them, of which a lot of them already aren't, because we aren't getting paid from the music. But now it gets a lot more complex, because there isn't an organization that claims these royalties on behalf of your regular, day-to-day artist in Lesotho. Obviously, there are exceptions to this, because there are artists that are registered to organizations that are outside of Lesotho. But in the case of the normal Lesotho artist, most of them aren't registered with these organizations outside of Lesotho. That means that they're already missing out on a royalty, because now the only royalty that they're getting is the royalty on the sound recording that is paid to their distributor by Spotify. And so what then ends up happening is all of these unclaimed royalties, they end up going to the most streamed artists on Spotify. And so that's a very, very big challenge. And the only way that this can really be solved is if our government does something about the legislation, because the copyright order, it really doesn't do much in protecting these rights for the artists, and there isn't any rates on the actual the mechanical royalties and how much the actual rate is, and then the performance royalty, they're not collecting them. If the government were to look into this legislation, then artists would get the most out of Spotify finally launching in Lesotho. Now, the next point that I want to really talk about is how internet service providers can make the most out of this opportunity. Because if you look at how people in Lesotho consume the internet, a lot of us are reliant on data bundles, right? And we are on prepaid, we don't use contracts, a lot of us. So it would be great if, just like your YME tunes or your My Muse or your YouTube, the internet service providers would just have an integrated Spotify data plan where you buy a certain data bundle and then you could stream Spotify for, say, a week or a day. That way, it means that Spotify would have a better user base in Lesotho. This might be a conflict of interest if you look at Vodacom already has a music streaming platform called My Muse, and so we'll kind of see how that ends up playing out. But hopefully, there is an integrated service plan for Spotify users. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was really the artists and how they can take advantage of Spotify. But this is going to be in the context of a local audience. And I think it's really, really great that we're going to have Spotify because the metrics are very, very specific to the point where you know where your song has been streamed and how many plays, obviously. But it's going to help when it comes to things like touring, because now hopefully Spotify is going to do this for Lesotho as well. But now artists will be able to see exactly which districts they're getting the most plays from, and it will allow them to focus a lot more on that audience. So it means that when they're creating their marketing campaigns, they know who to target, and that's an amazing thing. Overall, I think it's great that Spotify is finally in Lesotho because it means for the first time artists in Lesotho have a big streaming platform that actually pays them a royalty. I'm not saying there isn't music selling platforms that do that, but now there's ease of access to the actual local community, and I'm excited to know your thoughts. I'm happy to connect. You can find me on my social media. I am Matekoa Mots on Facebook, at Matekoa Mots, MatekoaMots on Twitter and on Instagram. Thank you for tuning in. Independent, going global on the internet. Where does talent live on the internet?